Hi, listeners. Kristin here. We had such a great show today with Dr. Paul Meier. We only do these once a month now, and boy, we used to do them once a week for years. We miss each other when we get on, but we were really excited about this one. It is a continuation of the series we did about marital communications, and we added peer-to-peer communications as well. But remember, Dr. Paul Meier is a leading psychiatrist. He's also an international speaker, and he is the founder of Meier clinics, which are mental health organizations across the United States. And don't forget, this man's been on Oprah. He's been on many television shows. He's written over 100 books, many of those on the New York Times bestseller list. So thanks for tuning in.
To the extent that we live our lives in a manner that is consistent with the truth in our heart, we thrive.
Welcome to the Meier Clinics podcast, and you just heard a quote from one of your hosts, Dr. Lisa Day. Join our licensed clinical professionals from various backgrounds as they discuss fascinating mental health topics with a wide range of guests. Meier Clinics is a Christian counseling organization with multiple clinics nationwide, dedicated to treating the whole person, emotionally, physically, and spiritually. Welcome to our listening family. We thank you for joining us. Hello, listeners. We are back with my favorite and your favorite too, co-host on Mental Health News Radio. Hello, Dr. Paul Meier.
Doing another podcast with my favorite hostess.
The hostess with the mostest. Yeah.
Yeah, hostess or host. Yeah.
Exactly. So,
and my good friend.
Yes. Oh my gosh, absolutely. So we are going to review the show that we did, but we didn't get through all of them, on the 24 guidelines for mature marital communication. And we also added
or peer-to-peer
communication. So we're going to do a review and then get to the rest of them on the list. So Paul, I am going to kick it off to you.
Yeah, because not everybody listening to us right now is married, but so it's I started writing these 35 years ago, and I've been modifying them and adding stuff. But so even though they're 24 guidelines for mature marital communications, I added the words 24 guidelines for mature marital or peer-to-peer communications, because they're good even with friendships and all sorts of relationships like that.
Right, exactly.
Okay. Number one. And you've heard us mention this several times on previous programs that we've done with our listening family here, is that whenever two people meet, there's really six people present, or whenever two people enter a relationship, a close friendship or a marriage, there's really six people present. There's the two people as they see themselves, the two people as they see each other, and the two people as they really are. And all six are a little bit different,
Right.
It's really humbling. Only God sees us the way we truly are. And if we think about that, it's really a humbling experience, because then we're not quite so proud and arrogant when we disagree with the mate, because we don't even understand ourselves that well. So when we have a disagreement, the me that I don't totally understand is disagreeing with the mate or close friend that I don't totally understand, and vice versa is true. So just think about that. That's sort of a deep concept, but think about that. When two people have a relationship, there's really six people present. The two as they see themselves, the two as they see each other, and the two as they really are. Now, in a very close relationship that develops over the years,
right,
they become more one, like two people, because they get to know the truth about themselves and the truth about each other, and they grow. So the longer you're married, the less true that is, but it's always somewhat true.
Exactly. And I wanted to ask you this. I wanted to ask you this one. So there are people that you meet, and I have this happen to me ever so often, where and it happens in people that are in a love partner type relationship, where you just met this person, you've only known them for a couple of months, and you're my soulmate, or you're my best friend, or, they do that kind of stuff. Now, when I get that from people, I mean, I don't get the you're my soulmate because I'm in a relationship, but I get the you're my best friend. And, you try to honor someone, but, oh, that's very nice. And you don't want to get them upset because you don't feel that back. But that's always a red flag for me. You just met me a couple months ago and I'm your best friend. So what do you say in those kind of, when you've got someone that does that?
Yeah. Well, I've done that myself before, and it's not good,
Right.
Because, I mean, you do meet some people that when you sit down and chat with them, there really is a good connection, where you do have a good feeling about each other, and you find out, that you're so similar in your desires, maybe to help other people or whatever it is, and where you just really click. Yeah, but that doesn't mean you really know that person real well, because when in fact when I see patients every day still, and I do mostly medication now instead of therapy, but I always do a little bit of therapy with it too, and so somebody will be married for 6 years, and then they find out that the whole time they were married, the mate was having like 47 different affairs, and
Right.
and stealing money, hiding money in different accounts, and that the mate is a total sociopath, and so they grieve, and they get a divorce, and they're grieving, and they miss the mate, and I remind them, I said, you don't really miss your mate, you miss the mate that you thought you were married to.
Right.
But the mate you thought you were married to wasn't that person. So for all these, however many months or years, you were fooled, and so, you still need to grieve. It's good to grieve, but you don't really miss the one that's out there that's divorced from you. You miss the one that you thought he was or she was.
Right. And that's something to examine, that living in Fantasy Island. Because I always think, boy, that person's projecting a lot of their loneliness, or that the needs that they don't know how to fulfill themselves onto me. And I think, listen, I don't have time for that, first of all. And second of all, I guarantee you, I am not going to measure up at some point, because I'm a fallible human being.
Yeah. And it's not always where one's, a complete sociopath and fools,
Right.
Sometimes there's two good people that really start being attracted to each other and falling in love, or just becoming really good friends. And then but you tend to idealize each other, and or maybe one reminds you of your mom or your dad or a brother or sister or somebody, and you project yourself onto that person. There's just so much unconscious stuff going on that when you get to know them better, they end up being not a bad person, but not who you thought you were connecting to. And it might be good. You might like that person better, but it might not be. It might just be that it's an area of incompatibility, even though, it's not a bad person or anything. It's just not the person that you thought that person was.
Right. And people change and grow, and you find things out over being around that person. I had someone that and I've had this a couple of times. I'm not sure why I always end up with, not always, but that I have ended up with alcoholic women. But I was hanging out with someone. I had no idea.
You have an attraction. You end up, I've known you quite a few years now.
Yes.
And you're for those who don't know Kristin, you won't meet a kinder person than Kristin, and she reaches out, and then sometimes she gets taken advantage of, and I'm the same way. I've been really, really fooled, sometimes. And go ahead. I got another thought on that too.
You don't know. I started getting messages saying, you know what, I want to go out, get drunk or drink a bunch of alcohol, and then go drive around in my car with you. I like to do that every day about 4:00. And would you like to go? And I'm sitting there going, what?
No.
Have you ever heard of Mothers Against Drunk Driving?
Yeah.
Like, what? in
Yeah.
what way would you think that I would want to be a part of that? It's just like,
Yeah.
yeah. So those things
Yeah.
happen sometimes, and I go, oh my
Yeah.
God, what have I gotten myself into again?
Yeah. And here's another thought that comes up a lot in therapy that I don't even have in the list, but what you shared made me think of this one. That we all grow too as people. The older we get,
Right.
and I'm so old I'm almost done growing, but but we all grow. And so really, when you have, even if you have a nice mature marital relationship or best friend relationship, every 10 years you're married to somebody different than the person was 10 years earlier.
Yes, exactly.
And sometimes that draws you closer together, and you both may be growing and maturing, but moving in different directions, and so every 10 years you have to sort of re-say your marriage vows and say I do to the one that you're married to that decade.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Totally.
So,
Absolutely.
I mean, we don't change a lot, I don't think, but there, we are different every 10 years. So, I hope my wife loves me as much 10 years from now as she does right now, or more.
Right. Exactly. Okay.
Hopefully she'll like me better.
Yeah, exactly. Hopefully as
Okay.
it goes longer. Now I derailed
Yeah.
this one. So now we'll go back.
Okay.
Now we're on number
Okay.
2.
Yeah. So the other ones, we've covered a lot of these other ones, but I'm just going to give like a 1-sentence summary of most of these, and then we're going to spend more time on one of them at the end of this program. But number 2 is, and I know not everybody listening to us is at all religious, but I really personally believe that commitment to God is vital in a marriage. I know that I did some talks to congressmen and senators and even some British Parliament on the opioid epidemic and what cures it. And you say, well, what in the heck does that have to do with this? But it does. And they wanted to know what therapeutic techniques work the best for opioid addicts, because it's really a difficult thing to overcome. And when I studied all the secular literature and the scientific literature and everything, what worked the best was spending a year in a 12-step program, like Betty Ford Center or someplace like that. And what they do, so I mean, they all call on God. They all admit that they have flaws. They get humble. They all admit that they can't do it on their own, which is a big step. And they all ask for the power for God to help them. And so I think the same thing in marriage, that when you're committed to God, then it helps make a marriage better. And I have people imagine a triangle with God at the top of the triangle, and then you and your mate or you and your best friend are at the bottom of that triangle. And the closer you grow to God, the closer you get to each other. So that's a summary of that. We don't need to go into detail, but
Yep, that's a good
okay. Okay, number 3 is life's too short to be normal. Now, what does that have to do with marriage? Okay, but normal is only a setting on your dryer or washer. We think when we get married or enter a close friendship, we think I'm a normal person getting to know another normal person, and that's wrong.
I would
none
never
of us are normal.
think that. I would never, ever.
Nobody's normal. And so you get in a relationship with a mate or with a good friend, and after a while you figure out, boy, that person's not normal. I thought they were normal, but they're not normal after all. But really, you're just as abnormal as they are, so, because nobody's perfect. And so, and we shouldn't even try to be. And so each person is unique. And so none of us is really normal. We're all unique in our own ways, and sometimes it's in good ways, and sometimes it's negative ways that we need to turn. So don't expect your mate to be, in other words, don't expect your mate or your best friend to be normal. And don't think that they're normal, and don't think you're normal. Right. If you think you're normal, that's pride. Okay, so that's enough of that. Number 4 is also easy and short. Agree to listen to each other's feelings. And I think women are good at that for the most part. Men are tougher at that. They want to argue about facts and stuff, but agree to listen to each other's feelings. And I've mentioned before that that it's tougher for men than for women, and that's not a sexist statement. against men, but I think part of it's cultural, but part of it, as an MD, we learned when we were studying, and I also got a master's in human physiology. So when we're developing in the womb, so an egg and a cell get together. There's 300 million little swimmers, a little sperm that are rushing to get to that egg, and only one of them wins out of 300 million. I mean, there's enough in one sexual encounter to repopulate the United States, and only one of them wins, and that one became you. So that's pretty neat, The fastest swimmer became you. but then so we all start as one cell, and then that cell becomes two and becomes four and grows. And for a while, they all look exactly alike. But then they start differentiating, and some become nerves, and some become bones, and some migrate here and migrate there. And a woman's womb actually starts out up in the head and migrates down to the womb area eventually. And if it leaves cells behind on the way, you have endometriosis. So when you have a period, there's cells that were left behind that bleed also in your gut and other places, and that's endometriosis. So that's an example. But early on, I think it's about the fourth week or so. I forgot exactly what day it is, but about the fourth week, the ones that are XY and going to become men have a testosterone release, and it actually causes a little bit of brain damage to the part of the brain that has to do with feelings. And why?
I always love when you tell this story. Yes.
Yeah, and why God did that, I don't really know, but maybe it's because he knew men would have wars and stuff like that, and men needed to be tougher for wars or something. I don't know why. Maybe he felt sorry for women and made men brain damaged or something. But we're all a little bit brain damaged, and it took me a long time to get in touch with feelings. I was in my 30s, probably. No, I was in my late 20s. So it's a little harder for us men to feel, and women live a lot longer than men. In fact, in a marriage, when comparing single men, now this is scientific research here, psychiatry research. Men who are single throughout their lives, they have 300% more heart attacks, strokes, and suicides than men that are married. So being married helps a man 300%. And I think, and I don't really know why, but my guess is that because when you're married to a woman who knows how to feel, you learn how to feel more. And I know that the leading cause of death we were taught at Duke medical school was anger, that stuffing anger. And so if you because I could go into all sorts of hypothalamus and adrenal corticotrophic stimulating factor hormone and all that stuff, but there's a bunch of chemical things that happen when you hold on to anger that make you more vulnerable to diseases and your body falls apart and stuff. And women who are single are only 4% worse off. So marriage helps a woman about 4%, helps a man about 300%. And I hated that study when I saw it. And I think that's why the Bible says, he that finds a wife finds a good thing and obtains favor of the Lord. It doesn't ever say she that finds a husband finds a good thing. But I know God loves marriage too, so I hope I don't get taken wrong on that. So anyway, agree to listen to each other's feelings. And number 5 is teamwork. Both mates are on the same team. And imagine a basketball game and there's 2 guards on the same team and they're dribbling down the court and they're trying to beat another team, but they both want the ball. They're both ball hogs and they keep stealing it from each other. Well, they're not going to win very many ball games if they do that. And when you have arguments as a mate, remember you're both on the same team, so arguments can be really good. They can be. I worry about a couple that doesn't have any, and but you're on the same team and you try to figure it out. So like in practice, you figure, okay, now I'll be in charge of the ball on this kind of play, and you be in charge of the ball on that kind of play, and then we'll both be using our strengths and stuff. And so remember, you're on the same team and not on opposing teams. Okay, then number 6 is related. Conflict resolution is the goal of a mature argument, not who wins.
Right.
Our natural tendency is to be, especially some of us, is to be competitive. And if I have a disagreement with, like my sister and I, both, I kept promoting my sister when I started out with the Meier clinics 45 years ago. She started out as my secretary, and now she's my boss. She's the president. And so if we have a disagreement, then as brother and sister, we start, we may start to argue about who's right. And then we stop and say, no, hey, we're on the same team. And then we resolve it. And in a marriage too, in my marriage too, it's easy. If I disagree with my mate about something, whether it's religious or political or otherwise, it's easy to get an argument and try to win instead of realizing we're on the same team and we just need to share. Okay, so number 7 is never attack each other. That's another aspect of being on the same team. So calling each other names or attacking each other is not a mature thing to do. It won't bring resolution. So discuss your differences of opinion and listen to each other's opinions. And then you have 3 possibilities then. When you each share your opinions, you can either compromise and come to a halfway point, or you can apologize if you figure out that you were wrong, or you can agree to disagree. And all without attacking each other. You don't have to agree on everything. It's fine for mates to disagree on stuff.
Agreed. I have something to add to that one. So something that, immature relationships, whether they're peer-to-peer or they're, marital relationships. So relationships where if they're new, something happens, I've seen, and I've had it done to me in friendships where, that person has attachment disorders or they're very fear-based, whatever it is going on with them.
Yeah.
And you need a break, you need a breather. And whatever you say to them, they're not hearing. They go straight to their fear or paranoia, whatever's going on with them, and they see your need for some space as, oh my gosh, they're going to leave me, they're going to leave the friendship, they're going to leave the marriage, whatever it is. Mm-hmm. And so they start clawing and clinging, and what I've seen happen is people throw down demands like, you will contact me by 4 p.m. tomorrow, or our relationship is over, or, I have let you go. And anytime anybody has ever done that to me, I'm like, bye-bye. Don't let the door.
That's just what I was thinking. If somebody's that way, if somebody's that narcissistic, then it's better to say, okay. Yes. Well, it's been nice knowing you.
That's the word I was wondering about was there's narcissism, unhealthy narcissism in that.
Yeah.
And that is
now, of course, if you're married, you don't just say goodbye. You get marriage counseling and hope to resolve it. But
exactly.
But then it may, if that person continues to be that way, then the marriage may not work out. So.
Right. Exactly. Okay. That was my 2 cents on that one.
Yep. Okay. Totally agree. If I disagree, I'd argue with you. No, not really. Okay, number 8 then is commitment to each other. When you get married, you are making a lifelong commitment. Now, that doesn't mean that it might not work out, but you're committing yourself for life. Because the feeling, and it's important that you consider marriage a lifelong relationship. It's not a prison, but that's your goal. And the feeling of love can vary, but you need to remember, you love each other deeply, and so you get married. But the feeling of love can go up and down. There's some days that you don't love your mate. There's some days that you dislike your mate. But hopefully there's more days where you love your mate. But 2 people marry because they love each other. But it's normal when you live together with somebody for a long time for those feelings to go up and down. And in Revelation chapter 2, in the first 5 verses, there's something really cool that when I was studying that I thought that applies to marriage too. God was talking to the church at Ephesus because they used to really love him and be close to God, but then they lost their first love. They were still a good church and doing good things, but they just had, fallen out of love with God. And he said, there's 3 things I want you to do that'll help you resolve that. And so I thought that would apply to marriage. And so that's why I stuck them in here. So there's 3 things that you can do that help you resolve that loss of love. So that's steps 9, 10, and 11. So I'll just skip on. Number 9 is remember. So the first thing is remember the romantic and loving things that were present early on in the marriage. or in a good friendship, the kind things you did, the way you went out of the way to help each other in situations, and so remember what you did when the feelings were the strongest, the feelings of romantic love in a marriage, or just intimate friendship in a peer-to-peer relationship. And so try to remember, and we tend to take each other for granted and forget the importance of maintaining those love feelings and stuff. But anyway, just remember. So that's one. Remember the things that you did when you did love each other. Number two is repent. And by repenting, that just means recognize that the decision you had made to love each other deeply at the beginning had now declined in intensity. And so it'd be wise and profitable for each member of that couple to make a redecision, is what we call it at Duke. You make decisions when you're growing up. Some are good and some are bad. If your parents always taught you that you weren't good enough, then you decided that you weren't good enough. And now that you're maturing, you have a redecision that, you know what, I am good enough. And you might have decided when you were a child that, if your parents taught you're supposed to do your best every day. And then when you grow up, you figure out, you know what, you only do your best. I told somebody that yesterday. I said, because he was saying he tries to do his best every day. And I said, no, well, don't. He said, what do you mean? I said, don't try to do your best every day. Well, why? He was surprised.
I want to know.
Why
not? Yeah.
Yeah. I said, why not? I said, because you only do your best one day in your life. All the rest of the days are a little bit less than your best. So don't try to do your best, because then you'll be disappointed every day but one in your whole life. So just try to do a good job of whatever you do.
Right.
And don't try to do your best, because you only do your best once.
So that's the whole live your best life kind of thing.
Yeah.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah. So you make redecisions. In the same way, in a marriage, when you've lost that love and you fall out of the habit, you're not nice to each other anymore. You're not necessarily bad to each other, but you just sort of, coexist. Then you make a redecision. I'm redeciding to make an effort to rebuild the love that has been lost. So you're choosing to love. Love is a choice. I wrote a book called that. I was on Oprah with that one. But so you're making a redecision. And then number 11. So there's the third step. So God said to that church, He said, so remember what you did when you did love me, and repent of the fact that you're not doing it now, and make a redecision that you want to do that again. And so you do and so you end up doing the things for your mate that you did when you did love him or her, even though you may not feel it. So you're doing them even though you may not feel them, which is number 11. Do the first works.
Hi, this is Dr. Paul Meier of the Meier Clinics. Our Christian counselors across the country have a goal of helping all those who come to us to become what God has called them to be. If you're in a situation where you're not at peace within yourself, or you just feel like there's joy that's missing in your life, we can come alongside to help you obtain peace and joy.
This message is sponsored by the Meier Clinic Foundation, a nonprofit Christian counseling ministry. The number is 1-888-7-CLINIC, 1-888-7-CLINIC.
So whatever or not degree of love you feel, you do the first works. And what happens is that as you do those things, the feelings come back, usually. So if you behave lovingly toward your mate after you've lost your love feelings, then usually the feelings of love will be revived. And the same way in your relationship with God or relationship with peers. So, okay, so that's those three. And then number 12 is no shoulds or shouldn'ts. And that surprises people too. That when you're in a peer-to-peer, now when you're the boss and you're talking to an employee, you can say, well, you shouldn't get here half an hour late, every day, or ever, unless unless there's an emergency or something. Or you can say should or shouldn't to an employee. You can say should or shouldn't to your child. If you're a teacher, you can say should or shouldn't to your student. But in a peer or marriage relationship, you're equals. And there's you should. I can teach you because I'm teaching you. I can use should. You shouldn't. You should never say should, and you shouldn't ever say shouldn't.
Right. That's why there's that saying, "Don't should on me."
Yeah, right. Because those are parent-to-child statements, and they're condescending. And those of you who are wives, you've already had a dad. You don't want your husband to be your daddy,
right.
And if he says you should do this, you shouldn't do that, then he's being your daddy. You don't want a daddy. You want a husband. And if you're a guy listening to us right now, then and your wife's the one that says should or shouldn't, you don't want another mother. You already had a mother. You want a peer. You want a lover. You want in fact, when we treat impotence, lots of times it's like a man and woman may have a great sex life, and then all of a sudden, after a couple of years of marriage or even sooner, the man can't even perform at all. And usually not always. Sometimes it's because they get into a mother-son relationship,
Right.
and he can't perform because unconsciously he feels like he's having sex with his mother. If she's the one that's
Right.
always using shoulds and shouldn't, then he's not able to, because unconsciously he feels like he's having sex with his mother. He doesn't think that consciously, and then when they resolve that, then the sexual function comes back again.
That's the greatest thing about having these conversations with you, Paul, because I know you're way more conservative than I am, but with we'll be talking about all this amazing stuff. We'll talk about God, we'll talk about medication, we'll talk about psychological behaviors, and then just in the middle of a conversation, we treat impotence with da-da-da-da-da, or, men that think that they're having sex with their mother.
Yeah.
Like, you can go on so many. I have stopped dinner conversations with neighbors where they're like, what did you do today? Well, I did a podcast with this guy that has Munchausen syndrome, and we talked about this woman that was injecting her own saliva to create sepsis. And, it's that same kind of thing where you can talk about so many different topics, and you'll just go there and you're completely comfortable doing it. And sometimes you forget the audience, and then you just see forks drop.
Yeah. You what?
I'm sure.
He said what?
I'm sure you have had that. Anyway.
He said you're having sex with your mother. No, it doesn't mean every time there's impotence that's what it is. So don't.
Exactly. Yes.
Don't. Because sometimes it's low testosterone. In fact, more often than not, it'll just be a lot of. I don't know if it's because of our diet or what, but a lot of men today, when they're in their 40s already, will get real low testosterone and just be unable to perform, or there could be a lot of different reasons. But sometimes it's because of the mother, the Madonna complex is what we call it in psychiatry. The Madonna complex, where you feel like unconsciously you feel like you're married to your mother, and so you can't perform. So anyway, no shoulds or shouldn'ts, because they're parent-to-child messages. Number 13 is, instead of shoulds and shouldn'ts, use I feel messages, because they're more effective. So instead of saying, if my wife says, if I get home late and she says dinner's gonna be ready at 6 and I get home at 7, and because I'm working on charts and stuff and I forget what time it is, and she says, well, you should call me if you're gonna come home an hour late. Then I would argue and say, well, I'm really busy. I'd make excuses stupidly, because she's right. I should.
Yeah.
But if she says, here's how I feel like I'm not important to you if you come home an hour late when we agree that we're going to go out to eat at 6, and you don't call me, then I can't argue with her and say, no, you don't. I know you don't feel that way.
Right.
So you can't lose.
Or worse, say you shouldn't feel like that.
Yeah,
then you're just shitting all over each other.
That's right. Then you're being a parent again. But it's real effective. If my wife tells me how she feels about something I did, I really am motivated to want to change it, because I really want her to love me, and I want to love her, and I don't really want to negatively affect her in any way. But I just naturally do, because I'm a jerk sometimes, So number 14, expressing appropriate anger to each other when offended is a sign of maturity in a marriage. Some people think, oh, he got angry at me or she got angry at me. Well, good. I say, well, that's good. I worry about a couple that never gets angry at each other, because it's a sign of maturity. Like when I was doing rounds on my day hospital patients this morning, one of the guys had cried in group, and I said, you know what? I heard you cried yesterday in group, and he was sort of embarrassed. And I said we were all bragging about it. That's a sign that you're really growing and maturing, because you learned in childhood that big boys don't cry, and the fact that you were able to cry about what you're feeling is wonderful. That's a sign of mental health. And same with sharing appropriate anger is a sign of mental health. And and the Bible even encourages you to share anger. It says in the book of Ephesians that it says, go ahead and get angry without sinning.
Right.
It's not even a permission. It's passive imperative tense for those who know the Greek. That means it's do it. Get it. If somebody's wronged you, go ahead and get angry, but verbalize it and forgive. And forgive doesn't mean you condone. It just means you don't carry around grudges. Let it not hurt you. Okay, and then number 15 is limit the confrontations to the here and now, and don't ever bring up past issues. So if you and your mate or you and your best friend have a conflict, then just limit it to that particular conflict. Don't bring up previous ones. And the step 16 is an explanation of 15. Don't use the words you never or you always, because that's bringing up the past and it's condescending again. When you say you never do this, you always do that, that's a condescending parent-to-child message. And anyone who uses those is bringing up the past, which should have already been dealt with and forgiven. And it proves to the other mate that you have vengeful motives, and bitterness is being held onto, or you wouldn't be doing that. And using those phrases really puts a limit on the amount of intimacy that you can have with that other person. So don't bring up the past. If there's past issues that need to be dealt with, go to a counselor and deal with them with the counselor together. Number 17, don't use the words "I'll try." If you say, "Well, can you do this for would you mind getting a loaf of bread on the way home, or would you mind doing this, or mind you doing that?" You're not commanding, but you're asking the person. And if they say, "I'll try," don't say that, because that means I'll make a half-hearted effort, but I won't quite succeed. So eliminate the words "I'll try" from your vocabulary. And number 18 is replace it. What you should do instead is, instead of "I'll try," say, "Well, I will do that," or "I won't do that."
Right.
And it's okay to say either one. You don't have to say yes every time. You have to say, "No, I won't do that because I won't get done till the last minute, and I want to get home." Or the Dallas Cowboys are going to play at 7 and 9. I don't want to miss it. I won't do that.
I remember a guy that I work with, extremely what we would call a passive narcissist, but still dangerous all the same. And I mean, he so wouldn't commit to anything. He would make everybody else take responsibility for him. So he so wouldn't commit to anything that I remember sitting next to him and I asked him to give me an answer on something that was a big deal. And he wouldn't. He was being wishy-washy, saying, "Oh, I'll try. We'll see. Yeah, it is what it is. Whatever."
Yeah.
I remember I like pushed him in the shoulder, like, "Come on, make a decision." And he
either you will or you won't.
Yeah, he literally fell over like a noodle.
Yeah,
and it flew out of my mouth. I said,
"That's fun."
He said, "Man, you don't have a spine. That's the biggest problem. You get all these women to have a spine for you, and then you hate them and punish them for it. That is called narcissism, my friend, and that is not healthy."
Right. Yeah.
He still kept being a narcissist, but yeah.
So you don't want to really, you don't want a long-term relationship with that person.
Right.
Even in business. Okay, then another 19 is don't use the words "I can't." Because if you say "I can't," that really means "I won't." So be honest and say, "Well, I will or I won't" again. Because can't. I learned growing up in my family. That's one thing I'm glad I learned. That can't is the worst 4-letter cuss word in the human vocabulary. And I had a really nice big brother that took me under his wing. He was 8 years older than me, and he took me under his wings and bought me my first basketball and my first little boat, to put in the tub when I was a little boy and stuff. And but one thing he would do is, if he ever heard me use the word "can't," he'd hit me 10 times on the shoulder. Now they wouldn't hurt that bad, but he was teaching me, and he was teaching me that don't use the word "can't." So now if I start to say, if I start to use the word "can't," I cringe. I can't. Oh, well, I won't do that. I really don't have time to do that. I won't do that. Or I will do that if I think I do have time and it's a good thing to do. Okay, I got to move on. Number 20 we're going to come back to. Number 20 is nobody can read minds. Because that's what I want to end up on. And we got about like 15 or 17 minutes left.
That's
Something
going to
like
be a 10-minute. So yeah, we'll speed through the other.
Yeah. So 21 to 24 are just statements. They're real short. 21 is agree on which topics are out of bounds. Having a boundary is a good thing. Boundaries in marriage are a good thing. Some very good friends of mine are John Townsend and Henry Cloud. In fact, I trained them when they were students, and now I think they're the leading psychologists in the country. They've written all sorts of boundaries books that have sold millions of copies, and they've appeared on television shows and everything. And I just taught a graduate class for one of them a week ago to 288 graduate students. But they've got a book called Boundaries in Marriage that I strongly recommend. But anyway, boundaries are a good thing in marriage or in life, and agree on which topics are out of bounds. So, like you may not like that your mate has gained weight or something. That's just that just came out of the blue because I've gained weight. My wife hasn't, but I have. But
me too.
And if you bring it up once and you talk about it, then if the mate says I don't want to talk about that anymore, then don't talk about it anymore. You don't keep bringing up anything. You agree on which topics are out of bounds, or it might be the mother-in-law, it might be politics. Let's not bring up politics because we got some extreme conservatives married to some extreme liberals, and they get along fine if they stay off talking about politics. And
right.
And so the agree on which topics are out of bounds. Number 22 is never criticize your mate's personality or their body or their limitations. So don't criticize your mate's personality, your mate's body, or your mate's limitations, because neither marital partner is perfect.
Right.
When I start thinking, my wife's got flaws, then I stop and think, well, you know what? You got just as many, if not more, than she does. Who are you? You don't deserve to be married to somebody perfect. Who do you think you are? And I think, this is my conversation in my own head that nobody else hears, except I tell you stuff like that. But because I know you accept me the way I am, but and then I feel embarrassed that I would think, we feel sorry for ourselves for being married to a person that's not perfect, until we realize we're less perfect. I ought to feel sorry for my mate more than me, and so. Never criticize your mate's personality, body, or limitations. Number 23, a mature couple would be wise to choose to love each other unconditionally. And you and I have talked a lot about animals. We both love animals. We both got dogs, and my wife and I have two little Yorkies. They're 14 years old, but they're only 7 pounds. And they sleep with us at night. One follows her everywhere. One follows me everywhere. And you and I talked about writing a book about things we can learn from pets, or things we can learn from Yorkies. And one thing you learn from dogs is unconditional love. I can be nasty one day, just in a bad mood and stuff, and not want to hold the dog on my lap and stuff. Or I can be real nice one day, and they love me. I mean, my dog, both dogs love me no matter what. And if I got a sore toe, they come and lick the toe, And if I'm feeling sad, they can sense it, and they come over and lick my hand.
I know.
And humans don't know how to do that. We just work at it. But a mature couple would be wise to choose the best you can to love each other unconditionally. And you can love each other unconditionally.
Right. And don't lick each other's hands, because that's just not safe.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. That might be fun. I wouldn't mind it that much.
Oh man,
I'm kidding.
We're having too much fun, I swear. No, that's not true. We are having a lot of fun, and it's great. I'm just teasing, but it's too much fun. It's fantastic.
And then 24 is a mate must never explode with rage. Mature anger is not hatred. Mature anger is not taking personal vengeance. Mature anger is not destructive. So sharing anger appropriately, like we recommended in these guidelines, is constructive, and it builds intimacy. When you share anger, in fact, it says in wise King Solomon 3,000 years ago, said in Proverbs, and I just thought of this, that if you rebuke a wise man, it means if you share your anger with a wise person, they'll love you for it. You'll grow more intimate. But if you share your anger with a narcissist, a fool, is the old Hebrew it's not really the Hebrew word, but it's the English word that we put in there. But it means a narcissistic, immature person. They'll just explode, and so don't waste your time with them. So if you're dating some person or in a close friendship with some person that every time you do share mature anger in a tactful way, they explode, then you better stay away from that person.
And sometimes
if you have to walk on eggshells, you're with a narcissist.
Oh, yes. Yes. And sometimes, we have to look at the way people communicate today. So sometimes explosions can be, if you figure out that this person is, after you've gotten involved with them, is a big drinker or a big, substance use of some kind that you don't do, or you maybe lightly do, but they are way addicted. And even without that, you don't have to get screamed at in person by someone or over the phone. It can be text messages at 1 a.m. that are encyclopedic. Yeah. I mean, it can be with all this paranoia and delusion and all this stuff. And that maybe you were kind of needing some space already, but when you get something like that, and then it keeps happening and they keep texting you, that's also what Paul is talking about. That's yelling at you in written form.
Yeah. As a positive thought is that there are some people, for example, men who were sexually abused when they were boys by other men. Right. For some reason, they when they grow up, they usually become really nice people. They're usually still heterosexual, although that's their choice, but they're really nice people. But they'll explode every now and then. So they have this buried rage that they don't realize they have, because they felt overly controlled. I guess that can happen to anybody that was sexually abused or abused in any way, but especially, I know many.
Most of my closest male friends, more of them than not, were sexually abused as a child.
Yeah,
they are the kindest, sweetest. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And so if you're married to somebody that's really, really, really nice, genuinely nice, and then once every 3 months he explodes with anger and saying nasty things and stuff, and I'm not talking about beating you up and stuff, but it explodes, and then if he's the nice guy that just has an explosive personality, then he'll feel bad about it, a few hours later or the next day for sure, and apologize and sincerely apologize and go out of his way to be nice. And if he gets therapy and figures out about the childhood abuse and deals with it, then he's nice all the time. So just because somebody explodes once in a while doesn't mean you should write them off, because sometimes they just need therapy to get over past abuse. And I think you talked about drinking. I think that if somebody's really a loving person, but they're just shy, when they drink, they become more friendly and more loving. If somebody's got a lot of buried anger and they're nice most of the time, and every time they get drunk, they get explosive, then they have a lot of buried anger on the inside. So, okay, and then let's go back to the main one now. I guess we only got about 6 minutes left, but that's all right. Back to 20.
Yes.
It's not the main one, but it's the only one that I wanted to spend time on that we haven't really that we really need to. It's back at number 20. Nobody can read minds. Okay, if you're in a close friendship or in a marital relationship, and the other person says something that sounds really offensive to you, then if you're mature, you'll ask the other. You won't assume that the person was trying to be offensive. There might be reasons why he sounded that way. It could be you're misinterpreting. It could be that he is being offensive. It could be that he's passive aggressive and doesn't know he's being offensive, but unconsciously he's being offensive. So there's several possibilities. So a mature mate will stop and ask the other one, "Will you clarify what you just said? I felt offended by it, but I'd like to know what you meant by that and why you said it." So stop. Don't assume the worst about your mate. Ask him or her to explain, and because there's the things that can go wrong. Here's how. Like we said, the very first one we said is there's really 6 people present in any marriage or friendship. The 2 as you see yourselves, the 2 as you see each other, and the 2 as you really are. So this was an example of that. One mate may do or say something with loving intentions, but they may say or do it in a way that gets misinterpreted by the other mate as being rude, condescending, or insulting. And this is if you have paranoid traits. If a person has paranoid traits, then they ascribe evil motives to others. So when the other person says something that is offensive, it may not be offensive at all to most people, but it might be offensive to you if you're paranoid and ascribe evil motives to others and assume that they're being evil,
right,
when they're not being evil. That's one thing that can go wrong is being paranoid. Another thing is people can be passive aggressive. If they grow up in a home where they dare not express anger toward a domineering parent, if they had a domineering parent and they learn they better be passive and they better never say they're angry at that parent because they're going to get clobbered in one way or another, verbally or physically or whatever, then they find ways to express anger unconsciously toward that parent, like when they mow the lawn, they leave streaks, or I had a passive aggressive friend, and they lived in a very nice house. He was very successful, and I really liked him, but he had a lot of passive aggressive traits. And his wife asked him to hang the Christmas lights on their $500,000 home, and he used 16 penny nails, sticking out. And she asked him if he would paint the windows upstairs, and he painted them shut. And so he would, when he paid his bills, even though he had a lot of money and made a lot of money, he'd always, we'd be going out on a foursome to go to a movie or something, and he'd have to drive really quick to the post office at the last minute to get it in the mail, because he'd wait till the last minute to do stuff,
right,
or be late when he had to catch a plane. He'd want to be there at the last minute. So those are all passive aggressive traits. I had another friend who his dad really wanted him to be an MBA, but he didn't want to be an MBA, and so he went all the way through MBA school and got good grades, and all he had left was one 5-page easy term paper, and he didn't get it done. But he didn't on purpose not get it done. Unconsciously, he couldn't stand to please his dad, and they gave him a 5-year extension. And he kept intending to do it, and the 5 years slipped by, so he never got his MBA, and he would have got like a $20,000 a year pay raise. And so he never got his MBA because he unconsciously wanted to punish his dad for making him get an MBA. Does that make any? So I mean, and so here's a successful guy.
Yeah.
That was a friend of mine that did that. And in marriage, you can be married to somebody that's passive aggressive, and so they may say something offensive, and then you say, that offends me, and they may sincerely say, I had no intention of offending you, and I don't understand why that offended you. And he's not lying. He's telling the truth, unless he's a jerk, then he'd be lying. But he's not lying. He doesn't know he's, and lots of times he'll be punishing you just because he'll scapegoat the person he loves the most. He'll punish you just because he's really mad at his mother, and you happen to be his wife, and so he will dump that anger toward his mother on you. Now these sound really, these are deep things that we see in psychiatry that sound ridiculous when you first hear them, but they happen all the time. So in marriage, mind reading is a destructive choice. So don't read the other person's mind. Ask the other person's intentions, and at least consider what the mate is saying. And then if you need to get therapy to figure out what's going on, so you see who you know who you are, you know who your mate is, but you're both wrong. Because you don't know yourself, you don't know your mate totally. Right. And you may need to get therapy to figure it out. But just remember, there can be paranoid things. There can be passive-aggressive things. There can be obsessive-compulsive things where you expect perfection, or you feel like you have to be in control when you don't, when you ought to be in control of anybody else. And so there can be all sorts of personality traits in normal people.
Yes.
Normal people have some paranoid traits.
Well, we just said
have some passive-aggressive traits.
Don't expect normalcy. So in people who have some normal behavior, along with all the others.
Yeah. So in other words, a summary of that, and we did it. We ended up covering it in time.
We did it.
A summary of that is don't play therapist. Let a professional do that.
Yeah.
Don't be your mate's therapist.
Yes, and
assume
listen,
that you assume that you know what they mean and why they said it and all that.
Exactly. And also, this is the same with those peer-to-peer. I get into this, and I know it's that thing, Paul, that you mentioned earlier in the show about me. I I'm steeped in mental health. I'm talking to people all day long about these kinds of topics. Great rapport, and I understand it because I've been in so much therapy, and I will get around someone in kind of a loose, not really friendship, but maybe it could become something like I'm going to work out with them, or we're going to go do this hobby together, or something kind of innocuous. But then a bond happens because I am very, very nice. And then all of a sudden I find myself, talking the way that I talk. This is how I talk with everybody that's in my life. But to them, they don't have these kind of conversations. They don't talk about this kind of stuff with anybody. Maybe I'm the only one that they talk about, and I've heard that a few times. You're the only person.
Yeah.
And what happens that I am learning to recognize sooner before someone gets latched on in an unhealthy way is to realize that sooner, because I have had people say, oh, like they get so upset if I can't hang out anymore, or I don't want to because I feel completely drained, because they'll say things like, well, I don't have to go to therapy because you're my therapist. And I'm like,
yeah, no, yeah.
No.
I don't, yeah, we're not each other's therapists. But we can share insights with each other and grow a lot from each other. And I've always been analytical. I'm glad I was naturally. When I was when you were saying that, I thought about when I was 8 years old or so, or maybe 6, 7, and I grew up in Michigan. My mom was sitting out on the front porch, and I went down to the sidewalk, maybe 70 feet away. So people walking by couldn't see my mom up there. But I went down there to make snowballs and stuff. And this bully that was a couple years older than me, or maybe 3 years older, he walked by, and I didn't even know him, but he walked by, and he just looked at me and shoved me down into the snow, and he walked on. And fortunately, I'm glad my mom didn't say anything. If he would have started fighting or something, but she didn't say anything. And I got up and brushed the snow off. I didn't cry or anything. I got up, brushed the snow off, and walked up to my mom, and I said, Mom, I wonder why he did that. So I was a psychiatrist when I was a kid, see?
Yeah, and you can't, Paul, how many people in your life have come to you and then they're really, getting, you and I have called each other about different things that we're upset about. And that's a once in a blue thing. But even in just a casual friendship with someone, you start to realize, oh, wow, I'm really putting a lot into this and it's draining for me. And they don't realize maybe that it's draining to you because that's, they don't talk this way. So you're the one who has to monitor, okay, I am being way too much of this person's counselor. That really isn't a friendship. This isn't an equal thing. We have to monitor that. So,
yeah. And so these encourage other people to listen to this podcast after you listen to it. Because, if you read a book on 24 guidelines for marital communications, it'd be do this, do that. It'd be real simple, simplified stuff. And this is not simplified stuff. No. This is realizing how complex we are.
Right.
That we don't really know. We don't really even know what we're thinking and doing half the time, or why we're doing it.
That's why it's
really complex.
Yeah, all the shows that you and I have done about analyzing our dreams and how we act out of our unconscious. All those things that we've talked about on shows are things that I have incorporated into how I live my life every day. And I know that so many listeners say the same thing. You two have, meaning you and I, have such great rapport and bounce off of each other, and they take those things too. And even if they don't agree with some of the things that we believe or that we talk about, still
I'd worry about anybody that did agree with everything.
Exactly. I used to worry like, oh no, if this person isn't this, then people are going to think I'm that too. And now I'm like, whatever. Everybody can make their own opinion about, we're like we said, we're not normal. Paul is not normal, and neither am I.
I totally admit I'm abnormal. Like that movie, where Frankenstein, where the Igor, sees a brain. He's supposed to bring another brain up for the doctor to operate on it. And he says, and the doctor says, what was the name of the person on the brain? He said, it was Abby Normal.
I don't remember that. So, I like it.
Yeah. So, we're all Abby Normal.
Well, this was great. Listeners, this is a big deal. Those of you that listen to us for a long time, like we never get to the end, especially of anything over 10 numbers. And we did that in one show.
It's probably the only time in 4 years that we've
Yeah,
gotten all the points done in 1 hour.
that is awesome.
24
And
guidelines.
exactly. I love it. Well, Paul, thank you, Dr. Paul Meier. Everyone, thank you so much for continuing to be my friend and for doing these shows with me. I love them.
It's a delight.
And listeners, thank you for tuning in to another Roundtable with Dr. Paul Meier on Mental Health News Radio. We hope you enjoyed this podcast. Tune in next time for another engaging discussion on relevant mental health topics. If you have any questions about Meier Clinics, please visit our website at meierclinics.com. That's MEIER clinics.com, or call us at 888-7-CLINIC. Don't forget to leave us a review on iTunes, Stitcher, or any of your favorite podcast apps. And please note that we are a member of and produced by Mental Health News Radio Network, MHNRnetwork.com.